You're listening to the Mile You're In podcast. Everything running related, from 100 meters to 100 miles. And now, here's your host, Phil Patterson Jr.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Mile You're In podcast. Although I've talked about this topic before, it became a little bit more relevant again this weekend. Just some recent athlete experiences in the news have also taken place that just caused me to want to bring this up again, and I feel like it's the right time to do it. A lot of times we look at these public figures, these athletes, celebrities, musicians, the platform that they have, a lot of them can tend to use it in a negative way, so it's nice to see them coming out and admitting to dealing with struggles that we all deal with, or majority of us do. And a lot of times we're, either embarrassed or uncomfortable discussing with people. They're making it more okay to talk about and to admit to. And for me, I've always been open with everybody. I told you guys about the mental health struggles that I've dealt with. Unfortunately, this past weekend, it caused me to drop out of another race, my second DNF in a row, which is, it's weird because, as I've mentioned on social media, when you do this 9 times in a row, having to drop out of them, it's odd. Like, it doesn't feel right. Something doesn't feel normal about it. And I think part of it is taking the distance for granted. Like, I've heard people say in the past, respect the distance. And I think whether it's ego, pride, maybe too much confidence, I got to the point where I was looking at it like, oh, I've done this before, I could do it again, especially this race because I've done it 3 times. So it's like, knowing what I know, I'm not going to say it was a walk in the park, but that's the mentality I almost had. Like, I know I could do this. I'm going to do this, despite dropping out of the previous race. Like, I got this. But you have to respect 100 miles on foot. It is what it is. It's brutal. It's tough. No matter how many times you've done it, it's never easy. We all have our different struggles that we deal with. For me, in this case, physically, I definitely was going to finish the race, where in the previous race, it wasn't going to happen. The chafing was too bad. Unfortunately, I experienced chafing again this time, but it wasn't as bad. It was in a different spot, so it was a little more tolerable, but it got to me mentally. I was like, I'm not doing this again. Like, I'm just not. So I battled with myself for a good 10 miles. Every time I finished a loop, I stopped and took a break and just convinced myself to get back out there and do another loop. And it was working for a while, but eventually mentally I had enough. If it had been my last race of the year, again, knowing I was ahead of the pace to finish on time, then I would have done it. But I have one more race in 3 weeks. So I told myself, we've been looking forward to that race as well. It's the last one for the year. Let's just take what we got out of this and get ready for the last race. It's the mental aspect that I want to discuss, because I'm all for encouraging people, especially when we know they're capable of doing something. But there has to be a point where we aren't blind to what we're doing, because I think sometimes we're so encouraging and motivating that we don't realize the pressure we're putting onto a person. It's tough to gauge that because, like in my case, I had a lot of my friends were, once they heard me, and that's the thing, like when I have those doubts in the past, I don't want to say it's a cry for help, but sometimes I know if I stay in my head, it's only going to get worse. So I'm like, okay, if I tell people, if I see someone on the course and I tell them, or if I grab my phone and post it on social media and then check back in the comments later, like I know it's something that's going to motivate me, because you guys are there to support me and talk me out of, just giving up so easily. But there comes a point where giving up is not giving up easily. We have to realize we've tried everything, made multiple attempts to not quit. And at this point, it's just still not fun. Like, I'm not enjoying this. It's miserable. I'm not going to be happy. So why put myself through that? And you have to think of the long-term effects of that. Hours after I decided at mile 75 that I was done, to make myself feel better about it and not just pack up and leave, I hung out for another, I want to say 5 hours or so. Like, I hung out and started cheering on the other runners and encouraging them. I felt like if I just got up and left and isolated again, it would have just eaten at me until I eventually fell asleep. I didn't want to be in that type of mental and emotional state, especially after what I had just put myself through. So I wanted to find some positive in it, and that was to experience the joy of other runners, which can be tough too, because you see them out there pushing and some of them being in worse states than you are. But we all have different battles and different means of motivation. Just because somebody else is doing something doesn't mean you have to. Some of the people that were pushing themselves to these points, it was their first time doing the 100-mile distance. And I remember going through that same emotion and that having that same drive to finally finish. So we're all in different situations, going through different experiences, and it doesn't mean what we dealt with is the same and vice versa. We're already so hard on ourselves. I feel like we're our worst critics, and we put enough pressure on ourselves that we shouldn't allow other people to add to that. It's just, life shouldn't be like that. And when I started going through social media, once I felt, decent enough to do so, I saw this post on Instagram of Naomi Osaka. She's kind of pushing her visor down over her face, almost like in a frustrated or disappointed, definitely a negative look. Like, she's not happy. She's not feeling good at the moment. And the quote under it says, "When I win, I don't feel happy. I feel more like a relief. And then when I lose, I feel very sad. I don't think that's normal." And although I go into these races knowing I'm not going to win, I replace the word win with finish. So when I finish, recently, I don't really feel happy. I feel a relief. It's like, I finished, thank God. Like, now, nobody can say I'm a quitter. Nobody can say I should have pushed harder, or I could have did this or could have did that. Like, it's that relief of, now I'm going to get all the praise and the congratulation. I'm going to inspire people more, but if I drop out, I'm not. And that's not how it should be. Like, this is supposed to be fun. In my opinion, even if you're an elite and you're out doing these races and you're expected to win, maybe not all the time, just, here and there, it's still supposed to be fun. Like, it's a game. You know what I mean? Like, I understand people get paid for it, professionals. This is their livelihood. They have sponsors and things like that. So they have those additional pressures on them. But for us, everyday people that we spend the money, we drive ourselves. We don't have people flying us out to these events and paying for our hotels. And, it's all on us. And if you're going to invest all that time, money, and effort into this, it's got to be fun. Even if it means you don't finish sometimes, you got to take the pressure off yourself, because in the end, it's the mental health, as so many celebrities and particularly athletes are being more open to discussing. It's killing us, literally. We have to do what we can to protect our mental health. So when I think of the quote, no matter how many times I read it, it hits me every single time, because that's how I feel when I'm out there running these races lately. Like, I'm driven to finish, but when I finally finish, I'm not happy. I'm just relieved. It's like I can feel the weight taken off of my shoulders. The joy that I felt the first few times, the moments of tears of joy and excitement, I hadn't experienced those in the last couple of races. And I think it was just because it was becoming more of a job type experience. Like, oh, this is something I have to do, not something I want to do. I have to finish, not I want to finish. I say that to kind of encourage you guys that may be going through something right now, a struggle. You know, I know on previous episodes I've told you to take a break, and I try to encourage you to push past different barriers and do whatever it takes to overcome. But you also have to listen to yourself and, again, not let people put pressure on you. And I think that's where I respect someone like Naomi, who was willing to drop out of the French Open, you know, a huge tennis tournament, but just was like, you know what, I'm not doing this. Her reasons obviously were different, but the effect on her was the same. And I think that's something we have to respect. Anyone who makes a decision to walk away from something, especially that they love and that they're very good at, honestly, no matter what the reason is, we should respect it. But when it comes to mental health and seeing how it's affecting people lately around the world, we really have to respect it even more. And I think of Simone Biles. I mean, any Olympic athlete trains pretty much their whole life, but they're locked into a specific Olympic event for 4 years, knowing, okay, in this case, it was 5 years. But, you know, they go into their mind thinking, okay, in 4 years is this specific Olympic Games. I have to get ready for these next 4 years for this one particular day, weekend, you know, whatever the event is, however many heats there are, how many rounds there are, whatever. It's something you're training multiple years for. And for someone like Simone Biles to just drop out and also be at peace with that decision, it goes to show you that it doesn't matter how strong you are, how accomplished you are, how experienced you are. Sometimes it just gets the best of you, and it's going to have different effects on you. But it was honestly, when I thought about how she stuck around to still support her team after doing that, it's what encouraged me to do the same thing at this race. You know, I could have just, again, packed up and left, but I wanted to be there to support other people because that was still fun to me. Like, I still enjoyed the event. I appreciate everyone that offered to walk with me and just try to get me through another 2.5 mile loop to just get me a little bit closer. But I respect even more when they eased back and realized, you know what, he's in a good spot. He's happy with his decision. I'm not going to mess with that. And that's, again, my encouragement to you guys. If you're in that position of being able to encourage somebody, just be a little more aware of your words and the effect they're having. Look at the person you're talking to. Listen to what they're saying, how they're saying it. So just with everything that's gone down recently and throughout the year, and actually since COVID started last year, you know, I've realized as much as I love running, I love the sport, and recently loved the challenge of 100 miles, I realized that I became burnt out. I lost the fun of it, the joy of it, and I want to get that back. Like, it's not something I want to walk away from. So I've decided that after this next race, I'm going to take a year off of 100-mile distances. I know it's going to be tough because I always have that fear of missing out when I see my friends posting that they signed up for another race. And then even worse when I see them posting from the race and I see the photos and the videos and all that, you know, the cool belt buckles and stuff. But I've made a promise to myself for my mental health that I'm not going to do another 100-mile race until Wildcat 2022. So basically 1 year. But yeah, after that, I do have a half marathon in the Keys in January. Otherwise, I have nothing on the schedule. So we'll see what happens. Maybe it'll just be a lot of solo training. Maybe I'll sign up for some small 50-mile races here or there, 50K, something like that. I don't know. But I want to stay away from 100 miles, something that's going to cause me to be out there for 20 plus hours. I just want to get away from that for a while and replenish that drive. I feel like I've lost it over the last 2 years. You know, COVID has affected everyone in different ways, just with so many things being canceled or being home more than we normally are. Things just, you know, even if things are open, they're not the same experience. So I think that's taken a toll on me as well. As much of an introvert as I really am, and I enjoy being a homebody and doing stuff solo when I am out, I just think there's a lot of effects on me mentally that have taken place, and I want to just re-spark that joy and passion that I have for the distance. Plus, it'll be nice to not have to run so much for a while. You know what I mean? Like, it'll be nice to just be like, I'm only doing a half marathon. You know, I always joke that my wife says, oh, you run these marathons as training runs while other people train, you know, sometimes for years to run one of these things. And I think, to be honest, and if I'm going to be humble here, I started to have that cocky attitude towards 100-mile races. Like, I wasn't respecting the distance. I was very cocky, if you want to say that, because, you know, anyone who knows how tattoos and healing works, and if you've been following me on social media, you know I've been getting my arms sleeved over the last 3 months. That's not smart to do when you have 3 100-mile races. When you're constantly getting tattoo work done that requires healing and not getting out and sweating and working out and things like that, you need those things in order to stay ready for races like this. And the timing to do these things, these tattoos, was not very smart. Surprisingly and thankfully, I don't think that's affected me in these races. It's more just, you know, new issues that have arisen and some mistakes on my part. But it's the fact of not respecting the distance still in that sense, because instead of being afraid, I was overconfident that, I don't need this much training. You know, I'll rely on previous experiences and muscle memory of the distance. No, it doesn't work that way. It's not like picking up a bike after 10, 15 years of not riding one and just getting it back in a couple of minutes. So, I don't know. Basically, I just want everyone to consider not only our individual mental health, but the mental health of others. Definitely continue to encourage and motivate people, but understand when you're pushing too hard and when you could cause somebody long-term negative effects and to lose a passion for something. I think that's why a lot of people drop out of school, the pressure that's put on them to get a degree and to get a certain job. I think that's why a lot of musicians eventually stop doing music, because the pressure that's put on them to do so many shows and performances and appearances, and, you know, athletes that are put through some of the most ridiculous media sessions. You know, I just think there's a lot of aspects that come into our daily lives that shouldn't be there. And not only are they there, but they're there for so long and they're so repetitive, and it drains you mentally. So until the next episode, guys, just think about your words and your actions a little bit more, and respect what you're doing, respect the time, effort, everything that goes into it, and take care of yourself. Put yourself first and make life a little bit easier than we're setting it up to be.
Thanks for listening to the Mile You're In podcast. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Check out previous episodes and more at HeelStriker954.com.